For the longest time, I have been haunted by a vision. A vision that always ends with my death beneath my avatar's pitying gaze. I don't want to be the one dying. I want to be the one living. Forever.
The story surrounding Horatio's origins is purposely vague, so as to lend a powerful mythological tone to it. We would find it much harder to respect our gods if we knew them to be equal or even lesser in some ways than us. How Horatio came to be master of a race of clones is also a little unclear, and even how he earned a reputation as a deranged trillionaire. But if things were easy to piece together, then making these videos wouldn't be nearly as challenging or fun. The portentous dream used at the beginning of this video belongs to Horatio, the original one of course, in the comic The Perfect Plan. His vision reveals to us the catalyst for Horatio's motivations, as well as a barely subsurface narcissism. Dream interpretation isn't a science. It's open to multiple interpretations, and is also highly dependent on the individual and the culture they are raised in, but that benefits me because I'm not a scientist. However, dreams are how our subconscious deals with issues that it needs to process. Generally, they can be very revealing about one's worries, fears, and feelings at any given moment. Of course, sometimes dreams are wacky hallucinations, but I'm not going to get into it because Horatio's vision is not one of those. It's widely accepted that perceiving one's death in a dream can be interpreted to be crossing a threshold in your life, whether that be starting or stopping a habit, or surpassing an important milestone, or a bunch of other things. Being killed by one's doppelganger, as appears to be a worry of Horatio's, can be interpreted to be an inner conflict between two sides of oneself. It could be for any number of reasons, but in Horatio's case, I believe it is because he feels he is not achieving his full potential. Horatio's narcissism cannot allow for him to pass into obscurity, but it would seem that, by the time the comic takes place, Horatio isn't living his most perfect life. Not only is he troubled by this dream, but he appears to be wearing quite simple clothes akin to those worn by Max O'Kane, rather than the flowing robes that his avatar wears in the dream. It is only after Horatio finds this secret endless lab within the husk of knowledge that his dream changes. Instead of suffering and pleading, he now sees innumerable iterations of himself as far as he can see, and he remarks on how beautiful it is. Although Horatio was not likely a trillionaire before his appearance in The Perfect Plan, he most certainly is by the time of his appearance in Endless Space 1 and 2, and Love Thyself. So, how did he make his money? At the beginning of the comic, it appears that Horatio was already present on Auriga, searching for the particular hidden lab that he would eventually find near the end of the story. He notes that the planet was unwelcoming and dangerous, likely a reference to the myriad of races now unleashed on Auriga since the fall of the Concrete Endless. It would explain, then, how the SS Success knew it was within orbit of Auriga just before it was destroyed. Although there is no evidence that the Mazzari, other than Horatio, knew of Auriga. In fact, the heroes of Dungeon of the Endless seem oblivious as to their location. It must be considered how strange it would be to send an Ark to a hostile planet. Therefore, the situation must be one of the following. The Mazzari didn't know that Auriga was there, which is unlikely considering the ship's navigational computer understands what planet it is currently orbiting. The Mazzari did know that Auriga was there, but didn't know that it was dangerous. However, in this case, the ship should be travelling at the speed of light, as it is clearly not the destination. The Mazzari did know that Auriga was there, and also knew it was dangerous. But then, why is the Success anywhere near Auriga? And finally, the Mazzari knew Auriga was there and that it was dangerous, but sent the Success that way regardless of the risk to life. Truly, whoever sent the success towards Auriga knew of the danger inherent in its planetary defense systems. The destruction of the success in that case was almost a surety, thus leading to numerous escape pods and additional debris plummeting towards the planet like a celestial shotgun blast. And just by chance, Horatio is already there. After uncovering the hidden lab on Auriga and pilfering the relics he deemed valuable, he makes his escape to return to his ship above the planet. I believe between this point and the outset of Endless Space 1 and 2, Horatio made his trillions by selling his endless relics. He escaped with a sphere barrow of relics, each worth innumerable value due to the advanced nature of endless technology. After escaping and making his trillions, Horatio would depart from the Mazzari Empire to hunt for something that he had never had, nor indeed anyone, before or since. He put himself into suspended animation aboard his own one-man ark, after ensuring that the autopilot would awaken him once they had found a planet that suited his liking. Who knows how long he slept for, but it was at least long enough for the Mazzari Empire to crumble and fracture, its colony, Ryer, standing head and shoulders above the rest. When he did finally awake, it was in orbit around a luxuriously balmy planet, with crystal blue oceans and a dry but cooling breeze, a true beauty in the galaxy, surpassed only by Horatio himself, of course. But the beauty of the planet perhaps came secondary to Horatio's wants. This planet, as yet unnamed, harboured the ruins of numerous civilizations that had come before him, as well as an endless cloning facility. With some infrastructure already in place and the perfect specimen for a future empire ready to replicate, Horatio used himself to clone further copies of himself to populate the planet. The first of the new Horatios were designed to be subordinate to Horatio, more willing to follow commands and do the work he considered to be beneath him. Things like construction, accountancy, military training, anything that wasn't empire building. He named himself and the planet from which the Horatio Empire would expand from Horatio Prime, and all those underneath him would also be named Horatio in sequential order: Horatio 1, Horatio 2, Horatio 3, etc. From this point on, Horatios would follow a strict naming structure to assist in discerning who had authority at any given time. First, their rank. Second, the birth station. Third, their own chosen name. Fourth, a letter to denote which birth facility they came from. And finally, the batch number. The first three clones were, according to the main questline in Endless Space 2, terminated in the lab, as Prime believed that these clones would attempt to overthrow him. 4 and 5, therefore, were the first clones to reach adulthood. Actually, let's talk about the society of the Horatios, because adulthood is meaningless to them. In fact, there are a few concepts that mean nearly nothing to them. Age, gender, sexuality? What are these things to a race of clones? Firstly, the acquisition of knowledge is primarily, innate. The majority of knowledge is gained after birth, or what John Locke referred to as the tabula rasa. For a Horatio clone, however, they are born in bodies that have already accelerated through infancy and adolescence, all the while having images and messages beamed into them via dreams whilst they incubated. Not only are they born as adults, but part of the cloning process, it seems, significantly slows or eliminates the aging process. A Horatio who has been alive for a century looks identical to a newborn. Every Horatio is born male isn't the right word. We use male and female to discern between the bimodal genders, as far as one's sex is concerned, that is. But the Horatio do not have a bimodal gender structure. They have only one, Horatio, Even in performance, they do not perform as male, female, gender fluid, transgender, or any other gender other than Horatio. Perhaps due to this lack of any other gender than Horatio, their sexuality could best be described as yes. Sex isn't a procreative act to them, and so sex is purely for the entertainment and pleasure of it. Whether that be with another Horatio, a Lumeris, or multi-limbed amoeba, sex is simply sex. Their clone status, however, does create a painful disparity between classes, which is of course all by Prime's design. Although they are all identical, give or take a few minor differences, not all Horatio hold the same status. Where one Horatio, such as Eternus Pt.2, may be the Grand Headmaster of Megred's station, another may be a humble custodian like Darien F-19. In this society, in which everyone is literally born equal, the class disparity is a nonsensical and brutal reality that, in some cases, has led to revolts. The differences between clones is truly minor, keep in mind, as the Horatio have developed a quite Spartan technique for ensuring that all Horatio are exemplary genetic specimens. Flush the ones who deviate too far during incubation. Despite their genetic identicality and start to life, a Horatio's personal experiences can lead them down a myriad of paths in life. Oftentimes, this is not by their own choice or machinations. Every Horatio holds within them the sincere belief that they deserve the finest things, and that they deserve them before anyone else should have them. This is a trait that is still implanted into every clone as it assists station masters and the nobility to weed out potential upstarts. The best example of this can be seen in Love Thyself, in which the pomp preceding a grand feast leads to the discovery of a poisoned meal as a Horatio sneakily attempts to eat before any of the others. To live among the Horatio as ourselves would be to invite contempt and abuse for our imperfections and plain, ugly simplicity. To live among the Horatio as a Horatio, however, would be as living in a constant state of paranoid judgment and sneering superiority. It is to look to the starry skies and enter a world of ecstasy to imagine it filled to the brim with Horatio. Curious, then, that this obsession began with the discovery of endless relics, for there are those out there who began their first steps to independence in a very similar manner.